not, I'm Diane Wenger. This is Brenda Cyberling Morrow. She's a native. I'm a adoptive native of Schaefferstown.
So I'll explain a little bit how I got here, because everybody asks me, do I still live here? And I say, no, I still live in New Jersey. So, and how did I end up here today? So my last name was Cyberling. My mom and dad ran a Bell and Lowell Cyberling, and they lived right down the street on 897. And about 4 years ago, my parents' health turned, and they needed some help. So I retired from teaching. I taught 36 years in an elementary school in New Jersey. I did marry somebody and move away. I made the cardinal error of meeting a boy from New Jersey, and I was taken away. When they got sick, I started spending half my time in Schaefferstown and half my time in New Jersey. You may have seen a little blue bug with a convertible top that would get spotted, and I came back and forth. And my nephew Greg Moyer was on the board for Historic Schaefferstown, and he said, what are you doing up here when you're not visiting mom or dad? You're just sitting around. And I said, yeah, I'm retired. And he said, why don't you join Historic Schaefferstown? Greg and I share a love of history. We've spent some time, we're the history nerds in the family, and the rest of them leave us when we start to talk. So I joined Historic Schaefferstown. Unfortunately, my mom and dad passed away, and I met Diane, and I met Kay, and Lynn, and I enjoy it. So I come up once a month for the meetings and do some things that lets me visit my family that's still here. And as I say to everybody, Schaefferstown is still home. No matter where I go, it is still home. And I appreciate the beauty of Schaefferstown because, as many of you know, a huge development is going where my childhood was. As we say, we were very lucky to grow up where we did and have the childhood that we did. And nobody can take away any of those memories. And so part of this history was I wanted to preserve the history of this town. It's very unique. So prior to all of this, I had asked my parents about their history. So I created a jar and had 50 questions in it that I made, and I had asked them if they would pick one question a day and answer it for me. So I had asked them how they met, what their parents were like, what they played, and they answered all 50 of those questions. If somebody happened to stop by the house, they'd read it. I believe it or not, if you know them, I taught them how to use a tape recorder. I was telling somebody that the best recordings are the ones where they were like, I don't think we have the darn thing turned on. She's gonna be so mad at us now, So that's what prompted me. I met Diane and Jan, and they said, we want to do an oral history project. I said, oh, funny, I'm working on that with my parents. And with some technology that I happen to know about, we were able to transcribe by an app on the computer everybody's recordings. Because when you're trying to record notes, you can't hear what somebody's saying. I have a friend who's a court stenographer, and she's like, I'm not going to do 20 of these for you. So that's my background. That's why I'm here. So if you see me, the New Jersey car, it is me. I get to spend time with my sister, my niece, my Aunt Ruthie. And so my parents are included on here because I have all of the information that we asked all of you beforehand. So that's who I am and why I'm here.
Right. And I'll follow. We've only been here since 1970, but I feel like when we moved here, we came home. So and we had such good neighbors, including Lionel and Loretta right across the street. So they watched our kids grow up, taught our kids, and it's just been a great place to live. And you're going to hear more about how great it is as we go on with our show today. So
I'm going to see if this remote works, and it may or may not.
Okay. If not, I can hit the
Woohoo! Yeah, we're good.
Alrighty.
So I'll start out. We're just going to talk here. So our oral history was the process of how do we do that. So I had kind of worked that out in my head. I said, I think we can do this, and we'll come up with a way. So participants were what we needed. So we put something out there on social media. Would anybody like to participate? And got very little. So then I started going through the list of people that I knew. So I have Glenore. I was like, Glenore, I'm going to call Glenore. And then Miles Spittler, and then Harry Sanders connected with us. And Harry was all into this project, and he started giving us names, and some people nominated other people and they chose not to participate, which was entirely their choice. We wrangled a few other people into it, and that's how we ended up here today with them. So we started asking them a series of questions that we had, and we have an overwhelming amount of information. So thanks to Jenny, because I do things on a grand scale. You'd be here for like 4 hours. We narrowed it down just to school and community. So we probably have 15 more topics that we would be able to show you at some point in time.
Okay, so how do we go about this? Well, Brenda and I were the interviewers. And it worked out just fine. We thought we'd have a team of interviewers going out. It ended up being the two of us, but we had a ball. So as Brenda said, we selected and contacted our first group of people, and we compiled a list of questions and then whittled that down a little bit. And as we went along, we learned the questions that worked and the ones that didn't work. And we weren't tied to those questions. If we found somebody that knew a lot about, say, gas stations and cars, we talked about that. You know, if somebody had a lot to tell us about their church experiences or about scouting, we went with that. So we conducted the interviews, and we made sure to get permission from everybody we interviewed that we may archive the tapes and the transcripts. We're going to keep them in our archives. We also took photos and asked for vintage photos so we could illustrate what we were hearing. And then, as Brenda said, I was the stick in the mud on this project. I said, I want to do one, but it's too hard to transcribe these. I've done that. I mean, I had to do it for a class. One was enough. But Brenda found transcribe.com, by gosh. and it works. Now, it doesn't understand our Pennsylvania accents. It doesn't know what Kleinfeldersville is.
And Levengood is like
Levengood,
split into
no.
4 words or something.
But if you go, we went in immediately and looked at it, but it does know voice 1, voice 2, voice 3. So it was a godsend. Otherwise,
except when we met as a whole group, we had 5 people
Yes.
talking, and it's just like a free-for-all.
Right.
But we figured it out.
Yeah, and Barbara, you and I must sound alike because it thought that one person was talking the whole time. But I take that as a compliment if I sound like Barbara. So that was us.
So our participants range in age from 83 to 99. I think our birthday years were 1924 to 1944. Somebody was like, well, I want to talk with you now. I'm like, can you just let us get to 1944 and then we'll. So we do have the sign-ups here if anybody's interested. And if anybody would like to, we still would love to hear your stories.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I love all of this. So these are the people that we either talked in, convinced, or whatever. So, and some of them couldn't be here today.
Okay, I don't know. You know, you want, yeah, okay.
Or you could, you know.
Dolores, Dolly Philippi Fossat is not here today, I don't.
She had hip surgery.
Okay, and her husband Hen, okay, and Barbara Hammer Haley, and Barbara is here today. I had the best time with Barbara, and I met her dog Alexander, so.
And then next, my Aunt Ruthie fell, she's fine. She was very excited to come, but Beth said she's still having trouble walking, so I was not allowed to tell her I was in town today. So I stopped by Tuesday, and we had a grand time chatting and laughing. We have Harry who's back there, met with Donald Mock, Loretta, Levengood Krull, and Lyle Krull in their kitchen, and Diane moderated that. And then Cass, Leib, and Dan, I saw them somewhere. There they are. They allowed me to come into their home and chat with them.
And I interviewed Betsy Zimmerman-Nolte, and Betsy couldn't be here today, but if we do it again, you know, I know she wants to come, so we'll get her in eventually. I interviewed George and Dolores Noble-Lesher, and unfortunately we lost Dolores shortly after our interview, but I felt so privileged that I could spend time with the two of you. It was just such an honor. Okay. Carol Langle-Philippi and I she had a wonderful time visiting. You know, we heard lots of good stories. And Brenda interviewed Rita Reed-Mock.
There are my parents sitting in the front yard where usually you could see them. my aunt and uncle, Nancy Cole Seiberling and Vernon Seiberling. She was my first interview, and any of you that know Nancy, she had every question written down. She had all of her answers, and she was on top of things. Glenore, right back there, I called Glenore, and she said, oh, I don't think I'm gonna come today. I'm like, I'm picking you up, Glenore. So I picked her up and brought her here today. And a good friend of mine and our families is Miles Spittler. And Miles has a wealth of knowledge and a super great memory. So it was great to go sit with Miles, and especially in the conversation, he can name every gas station along with George from Kleinfeldersville to, I think there were 10. That could be literally a whole presentation. And,
Yeah, we have topics.
and we're still not sure why there were 10, but.
Yeah. But I also want to give a shout out to Loretta Bennett. You also had all her questions written out.
Yes.
You guys got A's on your
And I'm gonna jump in here, thanks to Helen and Butch, who I just took their picture when they came in the door, because I totally forgot when I was with them, and had a wonderful time with their amazing little dog while I was there.
And this just shows you the proficiency that we have, right? They got the picture in there while we waited. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about Priscilla.
So Priscilla Nedsley just recently passed away within the last few days.
We just got word yesterday.
I had called her yesterday and said, I left a message on her answering machine and said, Priscilla, I'm picking you up. I spent quite a bit of time with Priscilla. We laugh a little bit. I knew Priscilla was going to chat a lot, so I told Diane she had to call me after like 2 hours.
And I forgot.
She forgot. So I was in Priscilla's attic that day, and we spent time. We drew a map of the Schaefferstown west end, east end, whichever end, west end, yeah. And then when I left, I said, thank you so much. She goes, well, you're only half done, you have to come back. So I did go back. She finally got to live in the house where she wanted to for just a little bit of time, and I left a message and said, I'm picking you up, and Jan called and said she had passed away. So very sad. I mean, just was heartbreaking. And she has such a wealth of knowledge of Schaefferstown and a love for Schaefferstown. So I did know Priscilla growing up, so that was kind of interesting for me. And when I said, do you remember me? She goes, you're darn right I remember you. I know, good or bad, I don't know. So then you can...
Right, and I worked for Priscilla and Sammy at the store, so it's all connected. We kept saying that, everybody's connected. And I had the great privilege of interviewing Doris Longenecker-Yoakum in her lovely apartment. We had a really lovely chat, and I believe you have also the privilege of being the senior member of our interviewees. I probably yes. You told me you thought it was about 200 years old or something like that. I don't believe that.
So today we're going to focus on just the stories about school. So I'll let you start with this one, Diane.
Okay. This, as you probably know, the brick building that is now St. Paul's Social Hall was the town school for 55 years. Built in 1883 and an addition put on in 1904. And it housed grades 1 to 11. People that wanted to do a senior year had to go into Lebanon for their senior year at that time. Doris attended this school, and among her memories were, you were in a building behind the school, I believe.
Yes, they had a wooden building where first and second grade. And it was later on, like third, fourth grade, that you moved into
The main school.
Yeah.
And how about your bathroom?
Outhouse.
Outhouse.
Back of the lot.
Okay, and these were the good old days. She and her uncle, who was very close in age to her, walked together to school from the farm, where Brenda's grandparents lived. Yeah.
I'm going to see if we can turn this up, excuse me.
Okay. And we're going to hear it.
Keep in mind, Elwood and I always had to walk to school. So from the farm, we walked to school, we walked to church, to Sunday school, whatever. And we always had to accommodate for the time it would take to get from the farm.
And your father and grandfather wouldn't have thought of driving you, you told me, because that would involve the horse and buggy.
Heavens, no.
Yeah, okay. Didn't happen. Did you have off because it snowed? Did you have a day off when it snowed? Probably
No.
not.
No, we could walk to school.
Yeah, you walk.
There were no buses.
We're gonna swap sides.
Okay, we're gonna swap sides.
The internet went out on me.
Okay. All right. Okay. There we go. Cahill.
So Cahill residents and school memories, Miles, Ruth Crawl, Cass, and Rita attended Kleinfeldersville School. And that school went from first grade to sixth grade. And then after sixth grade, they had to transfer to Schaefferstown School. So I found this, as a teacher, I found this very interesting. There was a store next door, and it was called Olga's. And at recess time, she would come out and cross the street, and on the sidewalk, she would sell you candy. So did you go, we forgot Loretta. So Loretta went there as well. So that's fascinating, because that would, penny candy, which would never happen today at all. The other thing, this is, I think it's neat to hear the voices of the people that are talking, so we'll hopefully.
You know, say elementary age, like the store, August was right up from us. Well, hey,
Name
Coke
that
for 5 cents, Pepsi's for 7 cents, our Hershey bar was 5 cents. I mean, I grew up there and I remember that.
That in Kleinfeldersville?
Yeah.
Where was that? Like,
Right up from, well, 2 doors away from where, I lived.
oh, okay, there was a store there.
Yeah, August, yeah.
All
And then she would, people from, the kids from the school would have a list of things that they would want from the store, would go over to the store and buy them, and bring them back to the school. But on a Friday, the sixth grade girls would make hot dogs. They would say how many people wanted hot dogs that day, so that then we would get them ready.
And then that come after
So a
school.
hot dog was 15 cents, a soda was 6 cents, and then you could
Yeah.
get penny candy. Because I know we each get a quarter on a Friday. I mean, we look forward to that, you know.
Mhm. Now, was, the store, other store in,
Paul Lennox,
Was
that
this-
was downtown.
was that
Yeah.
like TV?
Yeah.
That's where that was, so was Paul Levengood had that before the Joe's?
Right, and my great-grandfather would have started the store. Adam J. White.
Oh, now, how was, okay, I'm gonna,
Okay, that was
yeah,
Reed, that was Reed.
that was,
Is that Reed?
no, that was Cass.
Cass.
Hi.
Oh, that
That's
was Cass,
hi.
okay.
Yeah, when I talked to Rita, she was telling us about her and her friend Anita, Rita and Anita, and Rita was 5 days older, whereas, right, 5 days older, and you did not let her forget that. They were both very, very nervous about going to Schaefferstown School. They were worried, could they keep up, and they found out that they could more than keep up. They excelled while they were there. The grades were combined, and my Aunt Ruthie, her comment was she kind of liked it. She said, because you were in first grade and second grade, you learned what you needed to know, but you also got to hear what was coming up and why you needed to kind of know what you were learning. So she really liked that part of it while she was growing up.
You know, say elementary age.
Okay, we had some of our participants who attended school out of town, in Myerstown. Carol, Dolly, and Helen went to Myerstown schools. The Myerstown Elementary, we're told, was where the library is now, and the elementary school, or the high school rather, was on South Railroad Street. That building's still standing. Dolly remembers her senior prom thing was an evening in Paris. And Bainey's furniture store was a sponsor, and Bainey's provided large cartons so that they could use to paint for their scenery. And we both really loved this story.
Helen?
The Valentine Queen and her court, where the girls danced the minuet and the boys did ballet.
And there's so many details to all these stories, you know, as well that we have. So imagine that happening today.
And can I take the next
Yes,
one?
absolutely.
Yeah, Barbara told me about living down in Middle Creek in a wonderful old red sandstone house. That's where she grew up. and she went to school in a one-room schoolhouse near her home. I found this online. Does this look like your school? Can you tell?
Kinda, not exactly.
Kinda, but not exact.
My father paid the Lebanon County, Lancaster County line was right above our house. And he paid more taxes in Lancaster County than he paid in Lebanon County. So we had to go to Lancaster County to school.
Okay.
And from there, then we went to
Ephrata High School, yeah.
Yeah.
So, this also was a one-room school with no bathroom
No
inside.
bathroom. We
No
had two
bathrooms.
bathrooms out the back.
Yeah. And one teacher taught all the grades, 1 to 8.
Yeah, we had the same teacher.
Yeah.
And if somebody was sick and had like something that was, you could give to somebody else.
Mhm.
again,
Contagious.
Yeah, contagious. Then she would take us home to her house in Robizonia, and we would stay in Robizonia so that we could go to school every day.
Oh, my goodness. How do you like that, Brenda, as a teacher?
I don't think I would.
Okay, and Barbara also told me about taking potatoes to school and roasting them in the stove.
We roasted them in the stovetop, that's what we ate for lunch.
And shared them with kids who didn't have lunch.
Pardon me?
You said you shared them sometimes with kids who didn't have.
Yeah,
food.
there were some poor people there
Yeah.
that were up in, I think that was, the township for here, right? And, they didn't have anything to eat, so we would always share.
So it's a good reminder of how lucky we all are, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, not even, yeah. And it was a good education.
Yes, she was good, and then we had to go to Ephrata High School.
And you were well prepared for that, you told me.
Yes, we were well prepared, yes, we were.
Okay.
So I think the outhouse is
I
gonna jump.
only flunked the one time, my father was really upset with me, I didn't get on
On the honor roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think an eye-opening, just jumping in here when you asked about the outhouse, is Harry, we were sitting there and he said, raise your hand if you had a bathroom when you were in high school. And I was amazed that most people,
Yeah, we had a small group gathering.
didn't raise their hand, and I'm thinking, I don't know how you could even explain that to high school kids. My great-grandmother had an outhouse, so I had some recollection, but, to tell high school kids that you're not gonna have a bathroom in your house, getting ready for school, it's, hard to comprehend.
Well, I didn't go to school around here, but that was my experience.
Yeah.
I had one at home, but I got to first grade, and like you said, there was a, two-seater outside, and that's what it was.
Yeah,
And Priscilla often talked about the outhouse behind, and she knew there were squeaky boards or something to get to it, and you would try not to, she had to learn to do that. So these are some fun facts about Heidelberg School, which as a teacher, some of these are gonna, as we go through here. It was one building, one room for each grade. I actually taught in a school that was, believe it or not, one of each grade. The kids I'd walk to school every day, no buses, and they could go home at lunchtime. So I still said that I taught in Mayberry for a little while. You could pack your kids, but the town kids like Betsy walked home for school for lunch. And Harry and Nancy spent time with grandparents. Nancy spent days and weeks on end at her grandparents' house here.
And Harry can tell you what his grandma made him for lunch.
So Miles, I'm gonna have to make sure this is correct here. Miles and my dad would bring their guns to school. Dad talked about it. And they left them and the dogs sometimes in the car. And I believe there was one teacher that let you leave them on the back table.
The guns or the dog?
No,
The guns.
Miss Seacrest,
Yep, that's who I had.
she was English teacher and she also
Yeah, we have
did the plays and everything like this.
Miss
But I
Miss
remember
Seacrest.
one time, she said something about us not being in school in the afternoon, but it's all right as long as we're there for play practice. And she always put on 2 plays a year. But you're right, we, today, this day and age, we had our guns in the car and my dog was in the car
Yeah.
with me, and,
Yes.
every day.
Yes, yes. So, I believe we'll hear, Loretta.
What do you remember about going to school as a child?
The first thing I remember is
Actually,
my
he
mom
did.
said,
he did pick on me, and I just got back at him. I tailed him every time he did it.
Oh, I'm taking his kid. But he would walk so fast, I think I wrote that in there. Then I would have to run most of the way. So I came home tired of it. And then of course, he got a dog. And then it started all over again. So I filled it up.
And the memories kept coming. Donald Mock talked about riding in a very old school bus that had benches that went the long way, and his quote was, "You were half on, you were half on the floor. You were on the floor half of the time, because there wasn't anything like a seatbelt to hold you on there." Okay. Lyle,
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
yeah, big surprise. What did Lyle talk about? Baseball.
All I know is in grade school, at recess, we could play baseball. Not softball, not kickball, not soccer ball, we could play baseball. That's what I remember. That's what we did during, and this was during elementary school.
Even if you had a thaw in January, you played baseball.
Yeah.
And
Terry.
you got home early.
Today, baseball wouldn't be allowed on the playground. No, you might get hurt. So we got hurt.
Where did you go to elementary school?
Schaefferstown.
Okay.
Schaefferstown.
Anybody
My
else?
my brother was one of the first ones in the new building, in second grade. In first,
Okay. At that same meeting, Donald was reminiscing about listening to Mrs. Guide singing "God Bless America," playing the piano and singing her heart out. He said he thinks she thought she was Kate Smith. Cass told Brenda about going to Boltz's restaurant after school and trying to beat the teachers. And that was where the gas station is now.
Speed Run.
Okay. Loretta told me about school fairs, right? Going to school fairs?
I guess so.
I believe you did, yes. Okay. And George and Dan, remember that in 1959, when they graduated, Schaefferstown and Newmanstown were together. They shared the graduation, but Myerstown, were they more snooty? They didn't share it. They went on.
Carol's
I used to go into politics.
And I believe I heard that the Schaefferstown people thought they were a little more innocent than the worldly Newmanstown.
Dan, you mentioned they came and smoked when they were here. Glenora also mentioned, which was, I was trying to remember, and I believe it was you, that when it split, certain people studying certain topics went to different schools. Like if you were in the business track, you went to Richmond, and if you, so I was trying to remember who said that, so that was Glenora. Miles remembers school being closed for VJ Day. Teachers' names: Dissinger, Bachman, Hawk, Lauser, Welch, Weick, Spangler. You know, all kinds of stories, and I'm thinking, wow, in 50 years, what are they going to say about me? Yeah. We're not sure what Fat Carl's first name was. George, Dan.
it was George.
George.
Okay.
So rumor has it that he was the bus driver, and he would make his wife put the chains on the bus tires when it was snowing. So we're just recording the facts. Yeah. Girls wore skirts or dresses. They weren't permitted to wear trousers to school. And this fascinates me: saddle shoes, white bucks, cleats on their shoes, and dog collars on their ankles. Like punk before it became punk, or I'm not sure. But it was more than, they went to Lloyd Baker's shop to have cleats put on. Butch Ginder, Glenn Ginder, I said, I'm gonna interview Butch Ginder. They're like, who's Butch Ginder? And I'm like, Butch Ginder. And then I had Glenn Ginder on something, and they had no idea who he was. So I've known him as Butch Ginder. He has a permanent reminder from his days at school, a small scar on his wrist. Right, Glenn? Butch? He was taking a shower after school, and he cut his tendon on his wrist. Must have been bad because Doc Zimmerman tried to fix it and couldn't, and it was more than he could take care of in his office. So talk about, you know, your sports injuries there. So the next one is Mrs. Spittler. My dad remembers her.
Describe one of your most memorable teachers. Well, that would be Mrs. Spittler. She could tell when you had teeth or a chewing gum, and she would see everything that goes on in the class. The only thing is I used to distract her by not having my work done, and then we'd talk about current events.
So that understands, explains my son who chose not to do schoolwork many times.
And we talked about school activities, and we heard a lot about sports. Betsy played hockey and softball. Loretta, you played basketball. Okay. Priscilla played virtually every sport there was. We didn't talk about it, but I know we have at least one cheerleader here. Loretta, were you a cheerleader?
She was in basketball though too.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Rita was a cheerleader. My mom was until my dad made her quit, my Aunt Ruthie told me. He did admit on tape that he was a little controlling, so we have that. So that explains why she's not in those pictures.
Were the skirts too long?
Maybe, they're a little too short for his taste, yeah.
Okay, Lyle, of course, played baseball. Butch played soccer and basketball. And Butch remembers running down South Lancaster and Market Street to practice.
Tell them what you did when you hit Maine, Butch. What did you do? You remember? You said once you hit Main Street, you blew past everybody to the school. Yeah.
No problem.
No problem. He's modest too. So this one is a little long, but if you know my Aunt Nancy.
Because not everybody liked sports.
You know, as a child, you were all over town. Nobody knew where you were half the time. You would go to things at church. You would walk there because my grandparents lived right in town. My dad would drop me off, and I sometimes was there for weeks on end. And I would say it was a wonderful place to grow up. We walked to school. We would come home for lunch. My grandmother at that time, when I was in school, she worked at my uncle's garment factory, George, the spinner factory. She would come home, make lunch, and then I would walk back to school.
So how did you get from the house here in Waldeck?
This is a little long, but it's
In the morning, I would go, a bus would pick me up.
Okay.
Right across the street. I just had to walk across the street. And then if I was going to my grandparents, I just walked there. If I was coming home, I got brought back on the same bus.
So she lived in Waldeck, if you're not familiar, that's out 419?
It was called
501.
501, toward the pretzel hut.
Yeah.
And were there a different number of grades, or were there only?
There was,
one
no,
grade?
it was 12 grades all in the same building.
Multiple first grades, or?
No, it was one room of each grade. But we had a gymnasium, we had an auditorium, that was also the gym. We had a science room. We did not have a cafeteria. You took lunch. You had to pack your lunch and take food for lunch.
Okay.
We did have physical health. I was not very good at that. I was not athletic. In fact, the one teacher told us we set soccer back 50 years. Because none of us were very good.
So I love that. You know, and she still remembers it and his name. It was Mr. Hoffmaster.
And his picture's over there.
Oh yeah, I totally put his picture up there, yeah.
His
Yeah,
picture's
think
there.
about that.
Okay. And we also heard stories about band and dramatics, and Miles was very good, apparently, at dramatics, the school plays. You were very good in the school plays.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
they bartered hunting and for leading the school play, so.
Okay, these were the
Yeah.
happy stories, but.
So, school looked a little different than it does now. And punishment could be harsh and often physical. Doris remembered talking in class and being made to sit in the corner. Loretta recalled the teacher knocking two students' heads together. I'm not sure if there were anybody that we know, but yeah. Harry and a buddy were kept inside at recess to practice penmanship. You all have beautiful penmanship, though, I have to say.
was Fred Dole.
Fred Tullibone, okay. They got tired and they went outside anyway and then got a paddling. Donald's cousin got slammed into a chair for writing with a pencil on a slate top desk. And definitely not today. The parents generally supported that. If you went home and found out you were punished at school, you invariably were probably punished at home as well. My first year teaching here, I taught at Fort Zeller, and I said at 22 years old, whatever I said was law, and then I moved to New Jersey and got questioned later on in my 50s that, you know, why did this happen? I was like, when I was 21, whatever I said was, you know, that's what you did, so interesting.
Okay, so it wasn't all school work, there was fun. And after school and on weekends, some of the people we talked to mentioned dancing to the jukebox at the Franklin House. You told me that you admired somebody who was a good dancer.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
I remember.
Yeah, because she was Annabelle, yes.
Oh, okay.
Harry remembered going to the Franklin House for ice cream, and he even remembered it was Pensupreme. And you want to talk about the freezers in the back, Harry?
Yeah, well, I remember they also, Loretta will verify this, because they also had all their dippers in a container of water.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. So they could dip them well, probably. And it was great.
Maybe about 15 cents for an ice cream cone? Or
Not maybe 12.
maybe, okay, not even that much. Yeah, when I wrote that, I thought, gee, that seems like a lot for the time. And Paul Bright in Riceville would give you an ice cream cone on your birthday. Then there was Staley Bear's gas station at the end of town. Okay. Donald told us about going to Staley Bear's after youth fellowship. His dad said, if you go to Youth for Christ, I'll get you ice cream afterwards. And Staley would serve them the pints of ice cream, and it was Hershey's, and then his dog Jigs would get a pint of ice cream too. And we also heard from Glenore about drinking Moxie.
Glenore said she was always good and stayed at home. She was the good one, and she did go down to the gas station to get a Moxie every
And you had to ask what Moxie was,
I
right?
did.
I have a can in my refrigerator.
I think I can pass on that, I'm pretty sure.
You're not from New England, apparently.
So, the picture here, I'm gonna jump to this, is the famous Schaefferstown toboggan. There was a toboggan that the kids rode on, and it was kept at the Franklin House for the kids. Bill Kroll kept it at the Franklin House for them. It'd be so cool if we had that today.
We
So,
do. It's in the barn at the Schaefer.
oh, it is, I didn't know that.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Learned something too. So I'm gonna jump here. My mom would tell me that they would coast down the cemetery hill, and they'd put one kid out on Main Street to watch for cars coming. And I mean, I'm like, how do you watch for cars coming? And you'd cross the street and go down by Binners. So, and they also talked about going to Tower Hill. That's is that at the park?
Yeah, past the park.
The park. And so that's kind of cool thing. They talked about flying. You have something?
No, I'm just gonna say this was Loretta Crowe, Kayville.
Oh, the hills in Kayville. Where did you guys go? The
Uh,
cemetery hill
They call it Shad Hill.
Okay.
And
All
Shad
right,
Hill was
road.
named Shad Street. Did you ever hear that? Because they sold fish there.
Oh. All right. So Dan remembers making kites out of paper bags and flying them up on the cemetery. It's always windy up there no matter when you go up there. They were recycling way back then. They would ride their bikes down to Fountain Park, fill up their water bottles, and drink out of the fountain. The sledding on the toboggan, Uncle Bill there at the Franklin House. There's some pictures I think we have of the stable, that there's actually was a building on the other side of the Franklin House. Nancy mentioned this, going to Monday night movies on the carnival grounds. That was like a date maybe night. And there were also some held upstairs here in the Patriotic Sons of America Hall. Harry and buddies had a circus, and Diane found an article written about you in the newspaper. So it was big time. People came, and yeah, so
Danny was supportive.
Yeah.
Dan, yeah, who was the ringmaster?
I think he was.
Oh, okay. Doris remembers how much fun it was living on the farm. We were comparing being able to grow up there. I always had something to do. And gas was cheap. I love this. 4 of them could go out for, everybody chipped in a quarter, and they had a gallon of gas for $1.
Right. Up here they showed movies, and Lyle's aunt was the one that played the piano for the silent movie.
Really?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need somebody to take notes for us.
And we had a piano.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
played the piano.
So this is what we love, like once somebody says something, it was just so fun to see how it brought somebody, I remember that now, so
Yeah.
that was just
Yeah.
enjoying that about it.
And we already touched on this a little bit because we heard from your aunt, but
This is Betsy.
Stop and he would pick me up and take me to Sunday school.
Mhm.
And that's how I started going to Sunday school. But no, just living in Schaefferstown was such a treat. I mean,
What was special about living in Schaefferstown?
I don't know, just knowing everybody. I often think of the people I was raised with, they almost seemed like your cousins or your brothers and sisters. You just were raised with them, you played with them on the playground, you knew everybody, you knew the store.
mhm.
Yeah.
How about going to school? What memory?
So, my Aunt Nancy talked about pranks, like she said there were good pranks. She said, like, people leave their keys in their car and you would take their car and you'd hide it somewhere. And I was like, you know, my friend's car just got towed in Philadelphia and that was not a fun weekend for us. So, but she said, oh, that was the funny kinds of, those were nothing, you know. So there were good pranks, I guess.
Brenda.
Yes.
In Kayville, at Halloween, they would move the outside toilets. And the constable was aware of those, Senator Frederick was his name. And he sat in the toilet one night and he tried to move his sitting there. He did it intentionally. I know he sat in.
Yeah. And we already heard a little about this. Kids could go anywhere in town safely. Nancy, I think your Aunt Nancy mentioned that, and Carol told me that. It was safe, right?
We went everywhere.
Yep. If you got hurt or a problem, this is Carol's quote, there was always somebody to help you, right? Yeah. Everybody knew everybody else, which was usually a good thing. Harry told us that one day he was walking up the sidewalk shuffling his feet, and Rob Beamister saw him and told him to pick up his feet, because his dad paid good money for those shoes. And you talk about your
Yeah, so my Uncle Bobby, if anyone knew Bobby at the meat market, Bobby loved Schaefferstown. It was, you know, if he wasn't in Schaefferstown, he wasn't happy. And he would tell everybody he would meet, there's no place like Schaefferstown. He loved living here and he had no desire ever to be anywhere else. We would go to the beach with him and he was miserable the entire time. Could not wait to get where he was going.
So that, yeah, and we do want you to keep sharing memories when we're done here, or even right now. But in case you're wondering where we're going to go with this, we're going to archive the recordings and the printed transcripts, so we'll keep those. And we're going to move on to a new group of interviewees next time around, probably next year. And we have a sign-up sheet, as Brenda mentioned. And then eventually, and this is kind of long-range plan, with all your permission, we will hope to print selected memories. And we'll probably do it like this, you know, program was, school memories, community memories, maybe church. You know, we'll divide it into topics, but so we hope to get a printed publication out of this, but we have a little bit of work before we get there.
Yeah, we would have loved to share something from everyone, but as you see, the time, but we have everyone's voices, which to me is a treasure, you know, to hear. I mean, my sister's not a fan of listening to mom and dad, but I love to listen to them, and you know, it's like having them in the room right there with me, and you know, it's a treasure to me. So I, you know, hope that others, and if you haven't in your family started to share those memories, take it from me, you know, get them, find them out, learn about them. It kind of tells you who you are, you know, and you know, you love to hear those stories. So we have a lot to go through. We found, you know, thanks to Jenny, who that, you know, this was one topic. We think we have like 13 topics that were in common with each other, so there's a lot to uncover. So we just wanted to take a moment of silence to remember two of the people that we were fortunate enough to have spent time. I mean, I think with Priscilla and with Dolores, like how lucky we were to get them on record them, like record their stories, you know, and have them. So if we could just take a moment to, that's a picture where I think Dolores looks so happy, and Priscilla's high school senior picture.
Oh, wow.
So thank you. And we just want to thank everybody. I think I had, you know, my husband's like, stop telling me the stories. And we're not moving back there. He's getting a little more forgetful. He won't erase it. But we just want to thank you. I mean, as you can see, I think we both had a wonderful time. If anybody didn't agree to want to be part of it, but you'd like to now, we'd be happy to sit down and hear your stories. So we talked about some of the people that went to Myerstown to school. They married somebody or lived here in Schaefferstown. I think Dolly Fosnot said the funniest thing when she met Hen. He would talk about Canada and Waldeck and Moonstown, and she came to Schaefferstown and she's like, it's not that big. Like, where are all these places? And you know, it's just that was the funniest thing to hear from her, because I knew those expressions. So, you know, the outsider, you know, Helen ended up being the postmaster here, but you know, didn't start out in Schaefferstown, and you know, it's funny how it's amazing, and you're very fortunate that so many of you have stayed here, so the stories stay alive.
Right, and just to pull Jenny into it, even we didn't get to interview Jenny's parents, unfortunately, but Donald Mock told us about sitting in Doug Zimmerman's office, and Titus came in with a screwdriver and a wrench and some tools, because he said the chairs are squeaking. So he made each person get up in turn, and he tightened all the chairs. I said, okay.
And he wasn't even there for.
No, he just came to fix the chairs.
Just last time he was there, they were squeaky, so had to fix them.
So thank you all so much.
So does anybody have any questions for any of the people that were here? Yes. I gotta get it quiet now. Hang on 1 second, we have a question. Yes. Jacob Foltz was the band director. I don't know if he was the strings director though.
I don't know how, is it marching band or a band? I don't know how many.
I don't think they had any strings.
I don't know.
We'll have to find that out. Okay. The question was, who taught violin? Anybody know who was a violin teacher?
You and your sister.
I don't know, but I have the violin. My father's violin.
He might know. Oh, so, did I have that? I think.
Bergner. Yeah, Mrs. Bergner.
Mrs. Bergner?
She was a music teacher at the high school.
And I saw Mr. Penchard was on there. He was there when I was
Penchard
there.
came after that.
Yeah.
That was later.
Excuse me, I do have the violin.
Oh, Barbara has the violin.
Yeah, I do have the violin.
Can you play
My
it?
father played the violin, and I played it at Ephrata High School then. But I still have it. Yep. So if you ever decide you want to have it,
We need a bigger building. So thank you for coming. Thanks for listening. Butch?
Did you know this used to be Brunner's Restaurant?
Yes.
All right.
You need to talk to Harry privately about a
Harry
story.
doesn't know much.
Harry knows a lot about this place, but it's not safe for publication, the story he has. So chat with Harry. So thank you. You can mingle and meet people. And so what about the silent auction?
They can take a little time and look at it.
Okay.
We won't close it.
Thank you.